Okay, perfect. I think we're recording now. Great. Thanks everyone for joining today. Appreciate you, Melissa and Tyler as well, for another Mental Health Awareness Month series. Today we're discussing multiple sclerosis, and where we will share how we can apply machine learning and artificial intelligence to improve health innovation and also support innovative technology growth and financial services. Perfect. Go to the next slide here. Great. Okay, so the objective is to review and discuss multiple sclerosis patient risk scores. That these patient risk scores can be identified using analytics for living, data primes, machine learning, and artificial intelligence algorithm. And before we get started, a quick disclosure, right? We have to disclose that this does not reflect any of the opinions of other companies that either we have worked for or others have worked for or other client work. Simply our own kind of content around some of the solutions that we have to help multiple sclerosis patients. We're going to walk through a quick introduction of myself, then Melissa and Tyler, then talk about multiple sclerosis, right? What is it? What are the causes? How many people are living with MS and why early treatment is important? Share the approach that we've utilized and implemented to identify risk scores using the AI, and then a call to action, right? Approaches, recommendations, and then we'll wrap it up with some services. Melissa and Tyler are going to take us through some, becoming a data scientist, right? Becoming a data scientist is top talent, I should say, and also recruiting. And then we'll have a quick discussion. Perfect. So Analytics for Living and Data Prime AI team. So I'm James Mansfield. Great to meet you today. Analytics for Living, we apply machine learning, artificial intelligence, improve health, right? Innovative technology growth, financial stability. I also am a lead consultant at Data Prime to support their life science division. Joining here with 25 years, it's many years, I think, in life science, and also working in CPG, financial services, and most recently in life science, I'm coming out of Merck, and then GSK. Melissa, if you can go and introduce yourself, that'd be great.
Yeah, thank you, James, for the intro. So my name is Melissa Wheeler. I'm the Director of Talent at Data Prime. I have with me my lead and technical recruiter, Tyler Roth, and she'll share more about her background in just a minute. But a little bit about my background. I have managed agency recruiting for over 15 years. And most recently, I've supported recruiting over at AWS for over 4 years. So Tyler, would you like to share a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, thanks, Melissa. So my name's Tyler Roth. I am the lead technical recruiter at Data Prime. My background is in aerospace engineering and also web development. I'm a full stack web developer. And I think those two combinations helped me become a better technical recruiter since I understand the technologies that a lot of the candidates are using. So I think that's a little bit about me.
Great. Appreciate you joining today. Exciting topic as well. Perfect. So we'll jump into multiple sclerosis, right? I'm sure you may have seen television ads or wonder what it is, but what is it? Right? Why does it happen? What are some of those? What is it about? So MS, as you see here, it's an unpredictable disease. It's the central nervous system, and it disrupts the flow of information really between the brain and between the brain and the body. So the pictorial here is a doctor checking to see if it's if your nerves are working correctly, right? If you ever got whopped with one of those hammers, then this is kind of the illustrative example. Certainly in all age groups you get those tests, but in multiple sclerosis patients, the disease attacks the central nervous system, so it disrupts that flow. So when a doctor whacks your arm, you may not feel all those impulses or see all those impulses. So your arm might not move at the same level as someone else. Right, and it's progressive. So, as we'll get into and discuss the next, why early diagnosis and treatment is important. So that's MS. What are some of those causes of multiple sclerosis? So some of the body's immune system, in this case, really attacks the nervous system. So if you've heard of almost like autoimmune, or where the immune system is attacking it, that's kind of one of those issues of what's happening. And when that immune central nervous system gets attacked, it causes damage. And the damage to those nerves kind of slows, even stops the nerve transmission. Right. So if you look on the right here, the illustrative example, you have a healthy neuron where the signal, right, if you get whacked on the arm, that signal goes up to your brain and then you move your arm, right? That's kind of that signal that you see. And they're called healthy neuron Schwann cells, right? Schwann, that is, and the signal. But if you go on the right, a nerve affected by MS, right? If there was damage, right, that signal's disrupted, right? So just as we had the little pictorial of the orange that's on here, right, of almost like a neuron, right, of that signal is a little bit disrupted. Because that's disrupted, it damages the Schwann cells and the pathway of the Schwann cells. In some cases, it may damage the myelin that kind of wraps nerve cells. It may also kind of expose the fiber. So essentially, it's not able to kind of go through and affect kind of those those neurons going through as well. So that's on the right where you see kind of where it's affected on that case. And research is ongoing, right, in the areas of immunology, epidemiology, genetics, infectious diseases, right? So there's many different, research that's happening here to kind of understand, some of those reasons why. So how many people are affected, right, and living in the U.S. And globally with MS? Right, and if you see here in the U.S., right, it's quite significant, right? There's roughly about 1 million adults. Most recent study in neurology is saying about 913,000. So it's a very significant number of patients, right, that are. And if we look globally, there's not a lot of data that's out there, but Atlas of Multiple Sclerosis just published a report. There's about 2.8 million, right, patients that are out there. So definitely significant number of patients. The pictorial on the right, why did I put that exercise? Well, this is from one of the articles that's out there in the organizations like Society of MS, and those patients with MS, right? They can give themselves treatment. So if your cell's damaged, right, you can work those neurons to hopefully regenerate, or work those pathways to hopefully regenerate. So here's kind of an MS exercise of where a woman's kind of wrapping their leg and stretching their leg to make sure that those neurons are working. But it's definitely a significant problem given that there's 1 million patients here and adults in the U.S., right? So why are we having this discussion around AI, right? It's really about early treatment. And why is early treatment important, right? And I'll talk about that, the MS Trust organization kind of pictorial here that looks at disability status on the right, kind of almost like the patient journey, right? If you've heard that term, right? Patient journey. So why early treatment is important is that early damage, right? The first bullet there, the CNS, can occur even before you experience symptoms, right? So if you think of a boxer, right, that's boxing and having concussions, right? Well, if they pass out, right, or get knocked out, right, that's damage, right, that's caused to those neurons. Car accidents, right, head injuries, a variety of other pieces can cause that. So once you know that, right, it's good to know kind of what those risk factors are, right, which we'll get in the next slide. We won't get ahead of ourselves. So, and the second bullet is really the best chance to reduce, right, this progression of disease and long-term disability and early relapsing phase is to get that kind of early treatment, right? And that's characterized by inflammation. So as that disease progresses, those neurons and so forth kind of inflame, right? And it causes more and more disability. The great thing is that on the bottom bullet is that there are many medications that are currently available to decrease that inflammation. And also early and ongoing treatment helps to minimize inflammation and reduce the damage to those nerve fibers or axons and that loss of that brain tissue, right? So on the right here, right, is just the illustrative kind of example, and I really like this pictorial here. It kind of talks about no disability, right, minimal signs of MS, right, and then going into moderate in terms of mild disability, and then severe enough to impair full daily activities, right, able to walk without aid, right, and then may require a cane, kind of where we are here, and then unable to talk, right. It can go that far to even confined to a bed, right, and then potentially death as well. So this is the progression of disease. So it's important to understand kind of what these pieces are, right? And I know I gave a couple boxing examples. Growing up in Philadelphia with the Rocky movie kind of always brings my mind. But if you think about a number of popular boxers that were out there that developed some type of dementia or some type of other type of multiple sclerosis issues because of those injuries, right? These are all things that could happen. Or someone that had a car accident and then years later they get worse and worse. Well, this is kind of that illustrative example, and that's why it's important to treatment. And given that, right, there's exercises, as you saw, therapies, medications available, right? Why not kind of understand what those risk factors are early, right? And that's why it brings us to here, right? To the how can ML, machine learning, and AI help to identify, MS earlier, right? And given that we know symptoms, right? Given we know there's a patient journey, right? A risk score can be identified to help patients, right, self-identify themselves, but also providers, right, to say, hey, what is the risk score? Or health plans to say, okay, let me look at all my patients in my patient population, and then see who's at risk, right? Or let's take Medicare, right? The Medicare database could say, okay, let's look at those Medicare patients over the past 10 years, who's at risk. Okay, here's a risk score, right? So just as you get your blood pressure score or your blood glucose or others, right? Why not have a risk score to understand, hey, what's my risk, right? Have I had a head injury? Have I had these other things? What are those issues that could have happened in the past, or even infection, right? We're talking about COVID here, right? There is a lot of speculation around COVID causing neurological challenges given some of the inflammation that occurs, right? So let's go into kind of diagnosing, right? So why is it important, right? Why can't you say, hey, patient walks in, I have symptoms, I have MS, right? Well, it's very difficult, right? These symptoms, they're non-specific, right? They suggest several different nervous disorders, right? So it's very difficult to diagnose, and that's why advanced analytics and machine learning and AI really comes into play, because it can take into account many different features, understand which ones kind of are a high kind of a rating or a level, right, or keep it basic of a score, right, and then provide a risk score, right? So that's kind of why we feel that AI and ML really works here and has worked as well. So let's talk about the symptoms, right, or features, right, per se, and why it's difficult. Well, sometimes I'm sure many of us have said, whoa, I feel that fatigue, right? Very simple, or numbness, tingling, right? Blurred vision, double vision, weakness, poor coordination and balance. I'm sure many of us listening on this call may have had these symptoms as well. Hopefully your risk score is low, but that's kind of what the point is here. A lot of these symptoms of patients can walk in and have these symptoms and they get misdiagnosed, or not, even the provider's not considering, well, is it MS, right? And then 1, 2, 5, 10, 15 years go by, and now the patient's in a wheelchair, right? And whereas they may not have been, maybe they would have avoided that disability and had a higher quality of life instead of at 15 years in a wheelchair, maybe 30, right? Maybe double their quality of life, and given there's medications available now, right? Why not kind of expedite and learn that, and utilize ML or AI to kind of learn those patients early, right? And not only for treatment, right, but even for clinical trials. Certainly difficult to find patients for clinical trials if you're on a line in a pharmaceutical or biotech manufacturer, even medical device manufacturer, and you're saying, hey, how do I get patients that may have had some early symptoms of MS, right? How do I find them? Well, the great thing about data that's out there is that it can identify some of those patients. Or when someone enrolls in a trial, you say, hey, can I see, can I have access to your electronic medical record? Sure, right. Well, let's screen those patients. And now that when you design the clinical trial, you're understanding, okay, here's a high risk patient, medium risk patient, low risk patient, to identify those patients as well. And as you saw in some of the pieces, that's been quite challenged with some of the medications that have been out in other therapies. But what the great thing here about some of the MS medications is that they're on the market and they're working, right? And they're doing some good things for patients. So how is this developed, right? So go back here. Oh, so just the pictorial here is, right, this is kind of what we'd want, right? You want to be able to feel, right, the flowers, or the smell of the flowers, right, and be able to kneel down and do those things. I mean, some of the things for MS, right, it may take those things away, right? You're tingling in your fingers, not able to feel and touch those things that you really would enjoy, or spend the time, quality of life with your, people that you love and care for. So that's kind of what the point would be, just trying to do it early so you can enjoy more. So here the risk score, right? How do we develop this, right? It's developed, really the great way about this, ideally would be developed on patient level data. And patient level data, electronic medical record data, APLD, real world data, right? All of those pieces can utilize to develop a risk score. And it's based on the group of those symptoms, diagnoses, procedures, prescriptions, medical codes. And they might, those historical pieces may not have been directive, like, okay, this is for MS or this is for that. But what's great about ML or AI, can look at the collective and say, oh, severe MS had this diagnosis, this product, this prescription, this symptom, right? And from there, we can discern kind of a risk score, definitely innovative, and that's where we say, with the analytics, put that score in the palm of your hand to kind of understand kind of what those impacts would be. So I'm going to drill down a little bit and talk about data here, and multiple sclerosis risk scores, right, and how we do it, right, when the approach. And on the left is, let's talk about the problem statement, right? We already said million patients, million adults in the U.S., 2 million globally, right? Challenge to diagnose, many missed or misdiagnoses for many, many years, right? And even you can add here, it's, difficult to recruit patients into a clinical trial. I didn't put it in here, but if you're online, I'm sure you're kind of asking, hey, that's one of my business issues. So what data and analytics do you need? And I input here, patient and then subnational data. So subnational data, so patient level data we talked about already. Would be, say, diagnoses, electronic medical records, procedures, right, tests, and essentially that's when whatever your health plan is, the health plan tracks kind of all your medical codes, right? So they have that unique ID and they can see everything that's there. And of course, prescriptions, right? I put in IQVIA. IQVIA is one of the leading data providers here in the US to track. There's certainly many others, but I think IQVIA is a really good source to kind of look at it more of a subnational and to see, well, how are these, being utilized within a population, or if you're trying to understand the utilization of prescriptions in your health system, right, in your health plan, then that can be able to enable that to determine that. Certainly, there would be electronic medical records. Most would have prescription data too, so it would be a combination of both. But IQVIA is good for a subnational to know. So from here, we can develop the trends, the gaps, for patients. We can also develop new and combinations of data ratios, right? It's not going to just be one prescription, one diagnosis, one procedure, right? It's going to be the combination. The combination is what's going to tell us kind of what that risk score is, right? They're using logistic regression. We can at least determine a probability, right, of those risk scores, right? So the algorithm that we developed kind of uses features of importance to kind of want to identify those key features, right? And then it runs that process to say, okay, here's those key kind of features that are kind of a risk score, right? Where AI comes in, well, we build on those key features, right? Over time, it learns to say, okay, wow, now that we've been looking for the past 10, 15 years of data, and now we're going to move forward and we're going to say, okay, let's look ongoing and see if there's other features that may come into effect to provide that. And the two pictorials on the right would be the output, right? One would be what's the subnational, right, or within your health system, right? Let's look at Premier or Medicare, right, Medicaid. Or Aetna, Kaiser, right? Taking that health plan data, kind of running those risk scores, and saying, okay, what's the overall plan risk for MS, right? Overall, and then the real value here is the patient risk score at the bottom, right? This nice pictorial here of a patient that they look happy, right? Maybe they now know, right? Maybe this woman that's here is in the middle with her parents. I'm assuming that's the case. That she was unknown why she was feeling this way for so long. Right. And now, right. Or potentially know, and now have treatment to kind of help. So, this is kind of the approach that we take, to go about, this, approach, and, can be used for many different business needs that you see from a health system, or even from a provider, or from, potentially if you're a pharmaceutical biotech company to try to identify, patients for a clinical trial or even a follow-up trial. I know there's a number of products on the market, right? I think, there's a lot of questions from pharmaceutical companies to say, well, how can I look at the benefits of the product for high, medium, low risk MS patients, right? Without having to kind of go ahead and do this whole, testing, process, right? To kind of see if that's as efficient, or do a head-to-head, right? That's kind of certainly an approach to kind of utilize this. Right. So I know we're close on time here because we're trying to keep this to 30 minutes. But essentially, this is the approach, right? If you're interested in further information, you definitely reach out to Data Prime and Lexeriling, where it can support this. Where we've done some work specifically with using this data to kind of provide you some illustrative examples. So essentially, the point that we love to make here, and I love this picture, it's probably one of my favorite, right, of a couple here sitting by the ocean, right, is that, right, it's not the end of the world, right, if you get a high risk score, right, that now that you have a maybe risk score, well, it could be communicated to your provider to alert them, right, to consider a test, right, a specialist consult, treatment are needed, but enable you to do things to enjoy kind of more and more. Looks like a sunset or a sunrise, hard to tell, but definitely a beautiful ocean sunset there, as well. Perfect. And then, the other piece that I'd like to add is, from a health system or a government health system standpoint, right, is that once you know kind of these pieces and scores and you put these patients into place, or let's say you're a health plan, you're considering, should I put on formulary this MS product, right? It's a monoclonal antibody. It's very advanced. There may be some cost, but let's flip it around the other side. Well, what is the cost savings around that, right? And let's say you're a government that has a high risk score, has a number of patients, but you don't have the funding to afford. Well, the point of this is we're saying that given the savings that could be offset, there could be potentially an approach where loans are offered from the financial services to provide you funding to at least provide that product, and the payment of that would be the savings over time. As those patients either are avoiding kind of more and more therapies and increasing costs, but also kind of providing that benefit to the patients. You can't put a number on life, right? But you can certainly put a number on healthcare cost. And a lot of the medications in the market do provide that. And this kind of is a way to kind of quantify that. Why ML or AI comes in place, right? It's complex, right? Because you have a patient that may or may not have developed MS, but we give a risk score. But now we can say, well, what's those risk scores over time? Now they're on therapy. How does that decrease cost? Now we can quantify it using machine learning and AI. Perfect. So this quick summary slide, I think I saw in the advertisement that you saw that were posted. We walked through. Today we went through MS in the U.S. Right, that it's definitely unpredictable. We talked about the causes, the problem statement of 1 million patients. That there's early treatment's important, and the last point that where ML and AI could help as well. Perfect. So I think that was some of the content. Now I'm going to just switch a little bit here to share a little bit about analytics for living and then Data Prime as well. So as I mentioned, for listeners, we're trying to with Data Prime, enable analytics to improve health, right? Our missions to improve access, right? The life-saving medications. Definitely feel that AI and ML improve lives. And there's a number of syndicated products we have, and also consulting services. Certainly the algorithm around ML and AI are some of the things that we can offer and manage, a variety of different data sets, but also the consulting services. So with that, Melissa, if you can give a little bit about Data Prime, that'd be great. I think we have probably about 6 more minutes.
Well, James, thank you so much for sharing all of that. It's good to hear that there's data, and we at Data Prime obviously appreciate the pulling in the data to telling a story, being able to use it and use it for good reason, right? To change the lives of people and the way that businesses make decisions. So we at Data Prime are a group of recruiters, we're developers, we're business experts, and we have experience in combining the AI with our human expertise. So we have a group of data scientists for our businesses, and you're showing the slide right now. If you can move over to the next slide.
Yep, sure. There you go. Thanks.
We're a full cycle recruiting partner. So our data services and our recruiting platform, we are there you go, are a family of services that we provide here. So I'm just going to go over some of our information. Our data science services, they provide full digital transformation from start to finish. So this is a service that we provide, which is incredible in the type of service that we can provide not only the headcount, but also the services and information itself. We have data insights and augmentation. We have resource scaling for companies, and then capabilities and gap assessments as well. We also create a capability roadmap. We have a lot of true partnership within recruiting, and just to identify the needs and the gaps within the companies and be able to fill the headcount like data scientists, data professionals that are needed. On the data professional recruiting side, I'll just highlight quickly, we have flexible people solutions. So that just means that we can provide like temporary support, long-term permanent support for people. We use a matching algorithm to understand the types of expertise and experience a person should have to fill some of their needs. And then we absolutely have a passion. We grow, we're empathetic, but we have a deep and wide network of data professionals that we support and manage relationships with. And I just want to give you a little bit of insight. So I've asked Tyler to give a little bit of background on data science. So Tyler, if you can share what a data scientist does.
Yeah, of course. So data science enables organizations to identify patterns and trends to help make business decisions while minimizing the risks. Without expertise of data professionals, big data really is nothing. So last year, McKinsey estimated that big data initiatives in the US healthcare system, quote, could account for 300 billion to 450 billion in the reduced healthcare spending, or 12 to 17% of the 2.6 trillion baselines in US healthcare costs. That's a lot. So on the other hand, bad data is estimated to cost the US roughly 3.1 trillion a year. So it's becoming very clear day by day that there's an enormous value in the data processing and analysis. And that is where the data scientists and the data professionals step in.
So what are if you can just highlight just a few benefits?
Okay, yeah. So you can empower management and officers to make better decisions, directing actions and based off of trends, which lead to more defined goals, challenging the staff to adopt best practices and focus on issues that really matter, identifying opportunities, decision making with quantifiable, data-driven evidence, testing these decisions, and identifying and refining of a target audience.
Great. Thank you, Tyler. And it just goes with a lot, James, that you mentioned about using this data to help make some really good decisions, especially for businesses. We at Data Prime provide the resources and also the level of expertise, our data professionals, to share some of the insights and just really to employ them with our different clients so that they can use our data in order to understand exactly what they're looking at within their org.
Excellent. That's great. Thank you very much. And it's great to have, the good partnership here to, provide solutions, because it's one thing with there's certainly the healthcare challenges, but then also, you need the right talent to kind of execute, aside from, us providing kind of the algorithms, it's another thing to execute. So I really appreciate you joining today, and it's great to have a great partnership here on this work. So perfect, great. So I think we have like two, 3 more minutes, but I thank you all for joining. I just wanted, before we go to the next kind of close up of things, thank you very much. Right, definitely suggest you join the next mental health series for some of the content that we have. And next one is we have COVID mental health. I'll just got a quick teaser here coming up this week, and then we also have another piece around the immunizations, right, that are definitely much lower, right, due to COVID. We also shared mental health this past week around teen suicide, and then we'll have some other topics that are coming over the next weeks. And then we did have a discussion yesterday around Alzheimer's, which was definitely exciting in the U.S. and Japan. Definitely, if you catch that is posted on the team site as well. And and as we mentioned here about some of the cost savings. So just going back here, thank you very much all for joining today. Just wanted to check, Melissa and Tyler, any other closing points?
No, thank you for sharing all of this data. And James, we really appreciate being on the call, and we're looking forward to the next series. So thank you so much.
Great, thank you. Okay, I stopped the recording.
You're still recording. You stopped the streaming.
Oh, stop the streaming. Stop recording. Stop recording. Word checks there.